Hello and welcome to Step by Step Painting with me, Christine Macshane. Today we're going to be painting this wonderful pumpkin painting. It's a great painting just at this size, but if you practice this one enough and then bring it up to a bigger canvas, it's really quite a stunning painting for any dining room or kitchen. Again, the same principles apply as any other painting that we do. We need a light source, and that will give us our shadow. And we're going to create the background, and then we're coming forward and we're going to be doing the subject matter. It doesn't matter what the subject is, there's always needs to be a light source and a shadow. So let's take a look at the colors that we're going to be using. We've got the hooker green again, the burnt sienna. I'm going to have some yellow ochre and some cadmium yellow medium. I will also be using the white and some orange. So let's get started. The canvas is on what we call a landscape profile. It's across lengthways instead of up and down, which is called the portrait. So we know that our light source is going to be on the left again because the shadow once more is going to the right. So this part of my background needs to be darker, and it'll progress over here to the lighter place. All my blending is going to go up on the canvas. I'm also going to allow some of the burnt sienna to show through here because I want it to have a warmer feeling than a green background would normally give it. I'm going to take some burnt sienna and bring it over and mix it in here with the hooker green. Now, as you can see, it warms it up considerably. So I'm going to start by putting this darker green up here in the corner. And I'm applying it until it comes off the brush so that my brush is not full of paint when I come back to pick up more paint. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of the yellow ochre, put some of that through. And then again, I'm going to just pick up a little bit of that burnt sienna on its own in a couple of places, not a lot. Now my brush is fairly clean of paint. If it still has a lot on, go ahead and wipe it off on your paper towel. Using the tip or the end of the brush, we're going to just move that paint around, a little rolling movement of the arm, almost like you're conducting music. Keep going until the paint starts to break up like it does here. You just want to move what you have first and decide how much contrast you're going to get with all the colors blending in here. I want to add more white, so I'm going to also add more yellow in my green. That way I don't lose the vibrancy of the green itself. I'm moving back into this place to pull those colors back and forth into each other. And now up here in this corner, I really want to be sure to get some of that burnt sienna showing. So I'm going to clean my brush, dry it off. It's not perfectly clean, but it's clean enough. And I'm going to take mostly the burnt sienna. And I've got a little green on my brush, as you can see, which is perfectly okay. And then I'm going to start again with the green that we had done before over here, down here, and a little bit more of the lighter, especially down towards the bottom, and start to blend that in. I'm not too worried about here because I know there's a big pumpkin going in there. And let some of that burnt sienna show through. So I do that just by very lightly dragging that green across it so as not to lose that warmer edge. If you would like to add more, you can. You're the boss, so you get to decide how much of what you do. Now the tabletop itself is a lot lighter, so I'm going to add more of the yellow ochre. Notice that there's still green in my brush, so I'm getting rid of it all on here. And I'm picking up white, and again, moving that paint across and creating that nice soft blend. If you need to wet this up again, you can go ahead and do that just by pulling a little more green down in here. Again with the yellow ochre, a little bit of white over here. The green is still coming through my brush, and that's great. I like that. If you don't have enough, just pull a little more green in, pick up the yellow ochre and white. The focus is on our pumpkins, so we're not trying to create too much drama in the background. We want something that's kind of going to complement it, create a nice natural setting for it, so that all the focus stays here with our pumpkins. You can, if you want to, finish off all in here. You don't have to if you know that you're going to cover it with your pumpkins. Entirely up to what your comfort level is. If you're not comfortable with plunging straight in and drawing in paint, go ahead and get some white chalk. And we're going to use that from time to time in our paintings. So I'll do what I can here because it's drying up pretty quickly. And we're going to create our shapes first. We want to be sure and fill the canvas proportionately. We don't need it to be too big unless you're just doing one. We want to kind of build it so that we can have two pieces in here and make them look like they fit in the canvas. When you're doing two objects or more that overlap, it's really a good practice to draw all of each of the objects until you're really familiar with it. That way the lines don't jump and start somewhere else. We'll know that this is a true line. So I'm going to put this other pumpkin, this is the base here. So I want to offset the smaller pumpkins so they're not on the same plane. So I'm going to have my smaller pumpkin start about here. I'm going to switch to white paint so that you can see it. So here's where my base is, and here's where the base of the smaller one will be. So I'm going to draw my overlapping, flattened out circle. That looks about right to me. I can also build this out a little bit. Give yourself your little indents, the little smile where the top of the stem will come from. And we know that the pumpkin is segmented. Where you don't have to define each of the segments perfectly, but we want to create that feeling and that shape. So let's start here. The shoulder of the pumpkin is relatively straight, not perfectly, and it opens up and comes down. And it's all going to come from the stem. And then the next one, again, straightish and down. And you'll notice now I have taken away that perfectly round feeling right here. I don't want it to look perfectly round. I want it to look lumpy, like a good pumpkin should. We're actually dividing it off into segments. They don't need to be the same size. So we just want to make sure that we're not creating a plastic looking pumpkin. And then this piece at the front is a little bit wider. And then this is going to lump out there. Remember we said we're going to go all the way through so that we know that these lines make sense when they come back out here. And we want to remember the back of the pumpkin, so each segment has to be drawn so that you create the lumpiness. Otherwise you're just going to have a circle pincushion kind of look. So that looks like our pumpkin. And we're going to do the same thing here, and the more warped or odd that you can make it, the better. So here we go again with the segments. And I can come out, there and down. And the one at the front is going to kind of come straight down. All right, so now we know that's what our pumpkins are going to look like. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush. And I'm going to stay with this brush. It's a size 4 bright. Now, the first thing I want to do in this particular painting is I'm going to come in with purple, and I'm going to create all of the dark areas. So I know that in here is darker. And that up on that where the rise is, it'll be darker. My light source, as we know, is up here. the white out of there. Picking up just straight purple, and as the curve comes around underneath, we lose some light. I'm not making a strong line here. I'm diffusing it. I'm just getting it softly up here. You can add water to this. It may help the purple go on a little smoother. Again, underneath and across and up, and sort of scrubbing motion is really kind of where it's at. We're creating color, texture, and depth in this part of the process. This is where I have to remember which pumpkin is in the front. So this guy's in the front, so I'm not going to paint it as if all of the way through. I've got my lines where I want them, so now I can just start painting the pumpkin. Light source is here, so this side of this pumpkin will be darker as it disappears, but not so much on this side, just a little. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the smaller pumpkin. Now while I have my purple out, I'm going to go ahead and pick some more up and get some of that shadow in. So we know that the shadow puddles at the bottom of where it sits, and as a short scrubbing motion and up into the crevices there, and I'm moving across to the right, as you can see. And out. And while I'm at it, and I still have my purple, I'm going to just pencil in where I think I would like my stems to go. And then I'm just going to move it across and down. And this little one here, I'm going to just make it a little shorter. And there we go. So let's go ahead and clean our brush and dry. I don't want too much water in my brush because then it thins the paint down and it doesn't give me good coverage. Let's start with this one here, and I'm going to pick up my cadmium orange, and I will just go ahead and bring it all the way through. Use plenty of paint, and then it will also mix a little bit with that purple, which is great because it already starts to create the undershadow. We don't need that to stay purple. We do have to blend it at some point. I'm going to wipe that off to the side a little bit, pick up just the orange again, pull it across. The coverage on this orange is particularly good. Pulling some of that purple out of that corner and down. Now when you get around here to where the purple is, you can pull your brush off kind of lightly so that it just lightly covers that and lets some of that purple show through. I'll then get some of that extra orange off, just pick up yellow again and do the upper area where that light source is hitting the pumpkin. Now you don't have to have it this bright of an orange. If the purple isn't taking care of some of that for you, you can pick up a little of the burnt sienna, and I will show you that. I have the orange and my brush has some yellow on. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of the burnt sienna in on the right lower area. And then I'm just going to go ahead, as we just did before, using the orange, fill it in. All the way through, again lightly through here, and I can pick up some more of that burnt sienna because that's kind of an orange brown, and pull some of that in here, and as you can see it adds some depth and color variation as well. So let's put a little bit more of that here. I like that. And even though it's covering up a little bit of the lines, that's great. It's creating that depth in here. That is created by the dark right next to the light. And I like that. Picking up some more orange, and again we're just going to work our way all the way from around the pumpkin with these colors. Go very lightly over the purple so we don't lose it all. It's adding such a nice detail to their pumpkin. I'm going to cheat a little bit and go a little bit onto this one, so do 2 at a time here because it's a smaller piece. Picking up the yellow. We know that the yellow light is being hit on the left, so even on these pieces, it does get hit right here. These pieces at the back, you could probably do a couple at a time because they're smaller. Just remember to have enough paint on there so that you can still blend. And again, picking up the cadmium yellow. This is a really great exercise for the concept of dark and light, dark next to light creating form. All right, so we've got that happening. Picking up just some white, and I'm going to come in on a couple of the spots where I really want to kind of focus on, and I'm going to put the white very softly right here, maybe a little there, not too much. You just don't want them all the same because the light source is directional, it's not diffused, it's not just all over the place. We just want it to be a couple of places. Okay, let's move on to our other one. The smaller one, let's change him up a little bit and let some of the green show through too. Maybe it's not quite as ripe, but there's a little bit of green in it. So let's put a little green over some of that purple area. And start all over again with the same process. Picking up orange. Now we don't want to lose this edge. See where I'm putting the orange on now? If I just left it like that, it would be kind of blah. It wouldn't look like it's forward. So we have to do 2 things. We have to make sure that the dark behind it, so we're missing some dark right in here, and right up in through here. So what I'm mixing here is burnt sienna with the purple, so I'm already warming up that purple a little bit, and I think this needs to come up higher, so I will add a little bit of white and come up a little bit. Okay, so now let's go back to this guy. So I'm going to add a little bit of white, and I want to put it in here so that it pops it forward. See how it automatically brings it forward by having the dark behind it and the light in front. And then I'm very softly blending that into place. Like so. So I have to do that at this one here as well at the back. I want to make sure that that is a nice clean line as well. Let me put that, while I have it on my brush, I'll bring that in. And then I also want to make sure I have a darker color right behind it, so I'm picking up burnt sienna and a little orange. Okay, and one more thing, just a touch brighter right over the top. There we go. When you have this sort of small area to work in and there's lots of layers to it, it's really a good discipline kind of to get it where you kind of want it, move on, and then you come back, because by then this will have dried and anything I need to alter or change can be done without muddying what's underneath. In classes, a lot of the time, that's one of the things I will do, is come back and tell people to go take a walk. Again, when I get to this darker area, I'm going very lightly so that some of that undercolor can show through. Let's do a second one while we're here. And again, with the yellow, cadmium yellow, popping some of that on, maybe putting a bit of color back in here because that's dry now, so I can. And a little cadmium yellow again, a little white. Pieces. Now, if you've noticed, I'm doing very short strokes and almost laying color in with a very little blending so that I'm having some interest, and it's very forgiving that way. Again, with the orange, recreating the shape a little bit. You can edit as you go, putting that around. And let me get some more of those done. And then what we do, once we've got all of these done, if it's just easy to paint right over that stem, go ahead. You can paint it back in. We're going to add the burnt sienna and bring some of that dark underneath and on the side. As you notice, I'm not really cleaning my brush a lot. As long as I have most of the paint off the brush, the color that I'm using will come through, and it also will blend nicely. You know, once you kind of get some of that paint off, you can actually blend with all those colors that are underneath. Not too much, but some. So now I have some of these marker lines where I've left it so I can see the segments. So now we want to kind of fill those in. You can either take a small amount of purple on your brush and give yourself a little deep shadowing. Remember, the shadow should be to the left, kind of creating that little edge in there. Not a hard line. See how it's just a touch, it's like a little glaze or a blush of the purple, and that gives us that nice distinction between the dark and the light. I'm going to use more water so that it just kind of runs almost like watercolor into those places there. So now we're going to do the same process for the stems as the pumpkin or anything else. We need to know where our light source is. And I want to use a little bit of white with a little of the orange and yellow, and maybe some of that yellow ochre too. My light source is on the left, so this has to be deposited more on the left part of that stem. And this is where you can use your finger to kind of diffuse it a little bit, let some of the dark through. Then I want to add just a smidge of the whiter white on a couple of places to kind of get it so that there are places where it's getting more gnarly and it'll hit the light differently than the other places. And I want to do the same on this one. Again, this time the front stem where it was sliced is going to get most of the light. And more of the color is going to be on the left or underneath. You might get a little hint of reflective there, but not much. And it's going to come all the way down. Remember, we painted over that one, so I need to come back in with my burnt sienna and purple, which are the two colors that would make that. A lot of the time people feel intimidated by painting because they feel that if I pick up the brush, I should know what's going to happen on the canvas and what to do next. And the more you paint, the more you realize, you know, that's just not the way it is. We usually have a pretty good idea, but be open to there being some changes. Sometimes you think it's a mistake, take a minute, walk away, come back later and have another look, because it may not be a mistake. It might be just a new direction that you didn't think you were going to take, and it works out just fine. Okay, so I'm really happy with this. The last thing you want to do is take a look. Are my highs high enough? Are my lights light enough? Are my darks dark enough? Thereby, is my contrast enough to make this feel three-dimensional and interesting to the viewer, who at this point is you. So I'm going to take a little bit more white on here and give this a little more of the white, a couple of little spots here, and maybe a little bit here where I want it to really kind of stand out. Diffuse it on the sides a little bit, and a little bit on there, and again, not too much of this, not too much. A little bit goes a long way. Just remember the areas you want the eye to hit the most. And we also need a bit of reflection on this side right here, but I'm going to not make it the strongest reflection. I'm just going to add that little bit of yellowy white light right there. We want to see that as the curves around here, and a little bit there, and just a hint. So there we are, our very own set of pumpkins. I've done this one many, many times. I love it every time, and I've even done it on, great big 3x4 foot canvases. It looks stunning on a big format. So I hope you've enjoyed painting with us. Remember, if you need any of your supplies, please consider going to your local art supply store for anything you might need: paints, brushes, and canvas. And I hope we'll see you next week.